Good evening, y'all. Pause this nonsense. How are y'all doing? Excuse my impunctuality. It is what it is. You can't set these things for 6:05 or 6:10. They only give you these 6:30 increments. It is what it is. However, we're picking up in chapter 83. We're going to go right for the gusto. When I say right for the gusto, we're going to go right for it. Chapter 83, page 71. If you have the Book of Enoch at home, let's go ahead and just drop right in. In a fast review of the last chapter. It's about the astrology. I'm not sure what time of day it is exactly where you're at. Right now, where I'm at is 6:06 p.m. The sun is out. The exact part of the day I couldn't tell you. I know that the sun comes up. I paid attention to the last couple of days. The sun comes up roughly around 5:30, but it's light out as early as 4:15 a.m. That's just me being mindful of the day. However, the book of the astrology is about understanding the intercalary days in the end. The last part that we read is about understanding the 4 days that rend the seasons that actually complete the year. Going right forward, this is the book of the dreams. Hope y'all are ready. Chapter 83, verse 1. And now, my son Methuselah, remember the angels just dropped him off for 1 whole year. I will show thee all my visions, which I have seen, recounting them before thee. 2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was quite unlike the other. The first, when I was learning to write. Once again, that's a skill that you have to learn to do. The second, before I took thy mother. I saw a terrible vision, and regarding them I prayed to the Lord. I had laid me down in the house of my grandfather, Malalel. I saw in a vision how the heaven collapsed and was borne off and fell to the earth. And when it fell to the earth, I saw how the earth was swallowed up in a great abyss, and mountains were suspended on mountains, and hills sank down on hills, and high trees were rent from their stems, and hurled down, and sunk in the abyss. And thereupon a word fell into my mouth, and I lifted up to cry aloud, and said, This earth is destroyed. And my grandfather, Malalel, waked me as I lay near him. And he said unto me, Why dost thou cry so, my son? Why dost thou make such lamentation? And I recounted to him the whole vision which I had seen. And he said unto me, A terrible thing hast thou seen, my son, and of grave moment in thy dream vision as to the secrets of all the sin of the earth, if all the sin of the earth. It must sink into the abyss and be destroyed with the great destruction. And now, my son, arise and make petition to the Lord of glory, since thou art a believer, that a remnant may remain on the earth, that he may not destroy the whole earth. My son, from heaven, all this will come upon the earth, and upon the earth there will be great destruction. After that I arose and prayed and implored and besought and wrote down my prayer for generations, for the generations of the world, and I will show everything to thee, my son Methuselah. And when I had gone forth below and seen the heaven, and the sun rising in the east, and the moon setting in the west, and a few stars, and the whole earth, and everything as he had known it in the beginning, then I blessed the Lord of judgment, and extolled him, because he had made the sun to go forth from the windows of the east, and he had ascended and rose on the face of the heaven, and set out and kept traversing the path shown unto him. Chapter 84. And I lift up my hands in righteousness, and bless the Holy and Great One, and spake with the breath of my mouth. and with the tongue of flesh, which God has made for the children of the flesh of men, that they should speak therewith. And he gave them breath, and a tongue, and a mouth, that they should speak therewith. Blessed be thou, O Lord King, great and mighty in thy greatness, Lord of the whole creation of the heaven, King of kings, and God of the whole world. And thy power and kingship and greatness abide forever and ever, and through all generations thy dominion, and all the heavens are thy throne forever, and the whole earth thy footstool forever and ever. For thou hast made, and thou rulest all things, and nothing is too hard for thee. Wisdom departs not from the place of thy throne, nor turns away from thy presence. And thou knowest, and seest, and hearest everything, and there is nothing hidden from thee, for thou seest everything. And now the angels of thy heavens are guilty of trespass, and upon the flesh of men abideth thy wrath until the great day of judgment. And now, O God, and Lord, and great King, I implore and beseech thee to fulfill my prayer, to leave me a posterity on earth, and not destroy all the flesh of man, and make the earth without inhabitant, so that there should be an eternal destruction. And now, my Lord, destroy from the earth the flesh which has aroused thy wrath, but the flesh of righteousness and uprightness establish as a plant of the eternal seed, and hide not thy face from the prayer of thy servant, O Lord. Chapter 85. That dream was about the earth getting smashed by heaven. Heaven falling on earth like an anchor and literally pushing it to the abyss. Moving forward. I'll elaborate on it later. Chapter 85. And after this, I saw another dream, and I will show the whole dream to thee, my son. And Enoch lifted up and spake to his son Methuselah, to thee, my son, will I speak. Hear my words. Incline thy ear to the dream vision of thy father. Before I took thy mother Edna, I saw in a vision on my bed, and behold, a bull came forth from the earth, and that bull was white, and after it came forth a heifer. And along with this came forth two bulls, one of them black and the other red. And that black bull gored the red one and pursued him over the earth. And thereupon I could no longer see that red bull, but that black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw that many oxen proceeded from him, which resembled and followed him. And that cow, that first one, went from the presence of that first bull in order to seek that red one, but found him not, and lamented with a great lamentation over him, and sought him. And I looked till that first bull came to her and quieted her. And from that time onward, she cried no more. And after that, she bore another white bull. And after him, she bore many bulls and black cows. And I saw in my sleep that white bull likewise grow and become a great white bull. And from him proceeded many white bulls, and they resembled him. And they begot, and they began to beget many white bulls, which resembled them, one following the other, many. And I saw with my eyes as I slept, and I saw the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and eat and pastured among those oxen. Those oxen. Question is, we're going to go back real quick, and I'm going to have to just interrupt for one moment. Did you hear about this white bull having oxen come from his loins? No, but if you listen, it says verse 5 or verse 4, And that black bull gored the red one and pursued him over the earth. And thereupon I could no longer see that red bull, but that black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw that many oxen proceed from him, which resembled him, and followed him. So understand that the black bull is where the oxen come from, not the white bull. But let's go ahead and go forward. And I again saw with mine eyes as I slept, and I saw the heaven above. And behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and eat and pastured among those oxen. So it turned itself into a bull. And I saw that after that I saw the large and the black oxen, and behold, they all changed their stalls and pastures and their cattle and began to live with each other. Mm. And again, I saw in the vision and looked towards the heaven, and behold, I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven to that first star, and they became bulls amongst those cattle, and pastured with amongst them, and pastured with them amongst them. And I looked at them and saw, and behold, they all let out their privy members like horses and began to cover the cows of the oxen, and began to cover the cows of the oxen. And they all became pregnant and bare elephants, camels, and asses. And all the oxen feared them, and they were affrighted at them, and began to bite with their teeth, and to devour, and to gore with their horns. And they began, moreover, to devour those oxen. And behold, all the children of the earth began to tremble and quake before them, and flee from them, and to flee from them. Chapter 87. And again, I saw how they began to gore each other and to devour each other, and the earth began to cry aloud. And I raised my eyes again to the heaven, and I saw in the vision, and behold, there came forth from the heaven beings who were like white men. And 4 went forth from that place, and 3 with them. And those 3 that had last come forth grasped me by my hand and took me up away from the generations of the earth, and raised me up to a lofty place, and showed me a tower raised high above the earth, and all the hills were lower. And one said unto me, Remain here till thou seest that befalls those elephants and camels and asses, and the stars and the oxen and all of them. Chapter 88. And I saw one of the 4 who had come forth first, and he seized all that the first star, and he seized that first star which had fallen from the heaven, and bound it hand and foot, and cast it into an abyss. Now that abyss was narrow and deep, and horrible and dark. And one of them drew a sword and gave it to those elephants and camels and asses. Then they began to smite each other, and the whole earth quaked because of them. And I was beholding in the vision, lo, one of those 4 who had come forth stoned from heaven, and gathered and took all the great stars, whose privy members were like those of horses, and bound them all hand and foot, and cast them in an abyss of the earth. Chapter 89. And one of those 4 went to that white bull and instructed him in a secret. What? In a secret, without his being terrified. He was born a bull and became a man, and built for himself a great vessel, and dwelt thereon. And 3 bulls dwelt with him in that vessel, and they were covered in. And again, I raised mine eyes toward the heaven, and I saw a lofty roof with 7 water torrents thereon, and those torrents flowed with much water into an enclosure. And I again saw, behold, fountains were open on the surface of that great enclosure, and that water began to swell and rise upon the surface. And I saw that enclosure, to all its surface, was covered with water, and the water, the darkness, and the mist increased upon it. And as I looked at the height of that water had risen above the height of that enclosure, and was streaming over that enclosure, and stood upon the earth. And it stood upon the earth. And all the cattle of that enclosure were gathered together, until I saw how they sank and were swallowed up and perished in that water. But that vessel floated on the water, while all the oxen and while all the oxen and elephants and camels and asses sank to the bottom with all the animals. What? Sank to the bottom with all the animals, so that I could no longer see them, and they were not able to escape, perished, and sank into the depths. And again, I saw the vision till those water torrents were removed from that high roof, and the chasms of the earth were leveled up, and other abysses were opened, and the water began to run down into these, till the earth became visible. But that vessel settled on the earth, and darkness retired, and light appeared. But that white bull, which had become a man, came out of that vessel, and the 3 bulls with him. And one of those 3 was white like that bull, and one of them was red as blood, and one black. And that white bull departed from them, and they began to bring forth beasts of the field and birds, so that there arose different genera: lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swine, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, and ravens. And among them was born a white bull, and they began to bite one another. And that white bull which was born amongst them begat a wild ass, and a white bull with it. And the wild asses multiplied. But that white bull which was born from him begat a black wild boar, and a white sheep. And the former begot many boars, and that sheep begot 12 sheep. And when those 12 sheep had grown, they gave up one of them to the asses. And the asses again gave up that sheep to the wolves. And that sheep grew up among the wolves. And the Lord brought the 11 sheep to live with it and pasture with it among the wolves. And they multiplied and became many flocks of sheep. And the wolves began to fear them, and they oppressed them until they destroyed and cried aloud on account of their little ones, and to complain unto their Lord. And the sheep which had been saved from the wolves fled and escaped to the wild asses. And I saw the sheep, how they lamented and cried and besought their Lord with all their might, till the Lord of the sheep descended at the voice of the sheep from a lofty abode, and came to them and pastured them. And he called that sheep which had escaped the wolves, and spake with it concerning the wolves, that it should admonish them not to touch the sheep. And the sheep went to the wolves according to the word of the Lord. And another sheep met it and went with it. And the 2 went and entered together into the assembly of those wolves, and spake with them, and admonished them not to touch the sheep from henceforth. And thereupon I saw the wolves, and how they oppressed the sheep exceedingly with all their power. And the sheep cried aloud, and the Lord came to the sheep, and they began to smite those wolves, and the wolves began to make lamentation. But the sheep became quiet, and forthwith ceased to cry out. And I saw the sheep till they departed from amongst the wolves. But the eyes of the wolves were blinded, and those wolves departed in pursuit of the sheep with all their power. But the Lord of sheep went with them as their leader, and all his sheep followed him. And his face was dazzling, and glorious and terrible to behold. But the wolves began to pursue those sheep till they reached a sea of water, and that sea was divided, and the water stood on this side and on that before their face. And the Lord led them and placed himself between them and the wolves. And those wolves did not yet see the sheep. They proceeded into the midst of that sea. And the wolves followed the sheep, and those wolves ran after them into that sea. And when they saw the Lord of the sheep, they turned before his face. But the sea gathered itself together and became as it had been created, and the water swelled and rose till it covered those wolves. And I saw, till all the wolves who pursued those sheep perished and were drowned. But the sheep escaped from that water and went forth into a wilderness when there was no water and no grass, and they began to open their eyes and to see. And I saw the Lord of the sheep pasturing them and giving them water and grass, and that sheep going and leading them, and that sheep ascending to the summit of that lofty rock. And the Lord of the sheep sent it to them. And after that, I saw the Lord of the sheep who stood before them, and his appearance was great and terrible and majestic. And all those sheep saw him and were afraid before his face. They all feared and trembled because of him. And they cried to that sheep with them, which was amongst them, we are not able to stand before our Lord or to behold him. And that sheep which led them again ascended to the summit of that rock. But the sheep began to be blinded and to wander from the way which he had showed them. But the sheep wot not thereof. And the Lord of the sheep was wrathful exceedingly against them. And the sheep discovered it and went down from the summit of the rock and came to the sheep and found the greatest part of them blinded and fallen away. And when they saw it, they feared and trembled at his presence and desired to return to their folds. And that sheep took other sheep with it and came to those sheep which had fallen away and began to slay them. And the sheep feared its presence. And thus that sheep brought those sheep that had fallen away, and they returned to those folds. And thus that sheep brought back those sheep that had fallen away, and they returned to their folds. Thank you. And I saw in this vision till that sheep became a man and built a house for the Lord of sheep and placed all the sheep in that house. And I saw till this sheep which had met that sheep which led them fell asleep. And I saw all the great sheep perished, and the little ones arose in their place. And they came to a pasture and approached a stream of water. Then that sheep, their leader with them, became a man, withdrew from them, and fell asleep. And all the sheep saw it, and they cried over it with a great crying. And I saw till they left off crying for that sheep, and crossed that stream of water. And there arose two sheep as leaders in the place of those which had led them and fallen asleep. And I saw till that sheep came to a goodly place, and a pleasant and glorious land, until those sheep were satisfied, and that house stood amongst them in the pleasant land. And sometimes their eyes were open, sometimes blinded, till another sheep arose and led them and brought them all back, and their eyes were open. And the dogs and the foxes and the wild boar began to devour those sheep, till the Lord of sheep raised up another sheep, a ram, from their midst, which led them. And that ram began to butt on either that side, those dogs, foxes, and wild boar, till he had destroyed them all. And that sheep whose eyes were open saw that ram, which was amongst the sheep, till it forsook its glory, and began to butt those sheep, and trampled them, and behaved itself unseemly. And the Lord of the sheep sent to the lamb, and the Lord of the sheep sent to the lamb and the Lord of the sheep sent the lamb to another lamb, and it raised it, being a ram, and the leader of the sheep instead of that ram which had forsaken its glory. And it went to it and spake to it alone, and raised it to being a ram. and made it the prince and leader of the sheep. But during all those, but during all these things, those dogs oppressed the sheep. And the first ram pursued that second ram, and that second ram arose and fled before it. And I saw till those dogs pulled down the first ram, and that second ram arose and led the little sheep. And those sheep grew and multiplied. But all the dogs and foxes and wild boars feared and fled before it. And that ram butted and killed the wild beast. And those wild beasts had no longer any power among the sheep, and robbed them no more of aught. And that ram begat many sheep, and fell asleep. And a little sheep became ram in its stead, and became prince and leader of those sheep. And that house became great and broad, and it was built for those sheep. A tower lofty and great was built on the house for the Lord of the sheep. And that house was low, but the tower was elevated and lofty. And the Lord of the sheep stood on that tower, and they offered a full table before him. And again I saw those sheep, that they again erred, and went many ways, and forsook their house. And the Lord of the sheep called some from amongst the sheep, and sent them to the sheep. But the sheep began to slay them. And one of them was saved, and was not slain. And it sped away, and cried aloud over the sheep. And they sought to slay it. But the Lord of the sheep saved it from the sheep, and brought it up to me, and caused it to dwell there. And many other sheep he sent to those sheep to testify among them, and lament over them. And after that I saw, and after that I saw that when they forsook the house of the Lord and his tower, they fell away entirely, and their eyes were blinded. And I saw the Lord of the sheep, how he wrought much slaughter amongst them in their herds, until those sheep invited that slaughter, and betrayed his place. And he gave them into the hands of the lions and tigers and wolves and hyenas, and to the hands of foxes, and to all the wild beasts. And those wild beasts began to tear into pieces those sheep. And I saw how he forsook their house and their tower, and gave them all into the hands of the lion, to tear and devour, into the hands of all the wild beasts. And I began to cry aloud with all my power, to appeal to the Lord of the sheep, to represent to him in regard to the sheep, that they were devoured by all the wild beasts. But he remained unmoved, though he saw it, and rejoiced that they were devoured, and swallowed, and robbed, and let them be devoured in the hand of all the beasts. And he called 70 shepherds, and cast those sheep to them, that they might pasture them. And he spake to the shepherds and their companions, and let each individual of you pasture the sheep henceforth, and everything that I shall command you, that do ye. And I will deliver them over unto you. I will deliver them over unto you duly numbered, and tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and destroy them, and them destroy ye. And he gave over unto them those sheep. And he called another, and spake unto him, observe and mark everything that the shepherds will do to those sheep, for they will destroy more of them than I have commanded. And every excess and destruction which will be wrought through the shepherds, record how many they destroy, according to my command, and according to their own caprice. Record against every individual shepherd all the destruction he effects, and read out before me by number how many they destroy, and how many they deliver over for destruction, that I may have this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, that I may comprehend and see what they do, whether or not they abide by my command which I have commanded them. But they shall know it, but they shall not know it, and they shall not declare it to them, nor admonish them, but only regard against each individual all the destruction which the shepherds effect, each in his time, and lay it all before me. And I saw till those shepherds pastured in their season, and began to slay and destroy more than they were bidden. And they delivered those sheep into the hands of lions. And the lions and tigers eat and devoured the greater part of those sheep. And the wild boars eat along with them. And they burnt that tower and demolished that house, and became exceedingly sorrowful over that tower, because the house of the sheep was demolished. And after that, I was unable to see if those sheep entered that house. And the shepherds and their associates delivered over those sheep to all the wild beasts to devour them. Each one of them received in his time a definite number. It was written by the other in a book how many each of them destroyed of them, and each one slew and destroyed many more than was prescribed. And I began to weep and lament on account of those sheep. And thus, in the vision, I saw that one who wrote, how he wrote down everyone that was destroyed by those shepherds day by day, and carried up and laid down, and showed exactly the whole book to the Lord of the sheep, everything that they had done, and all that each one of them had made away with, and all that they had given over, to destruction. And the book was read before the Lord of sheep. And he took the book from his hand and read it and sealed it and laid it down. And forthwith I saw how the shepherds pastured for 12 hours. And behold, 3 of the sheep turned back and came and entered and began to build up all that had fallen down of that house. But the wild boars tried to hinder them, but they were not able. And they began again to build as before. And they reared up that tower, and it was named the high tower. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread on it was polluted and not pure. And as touching all this, the eyes of the sheep were blinded, so that they saw not, and their shepherds likewise. And they delivered them in large numbers to their shepherds for destruction. And they trampled the sheep with their feet and devoured them. And the Lord of the sheep remained unmoved till all the sheep were dispersed over the field, and mingled with them, and mingled with them. And they did not save them out of the hands of the beast. Now I'm going to go ahead and go right there real quick. It says mingled with them, in parentheses it says the beast. So this is just indication that there's blood mixing going on, but we're going to carry on and go forth. I'm going to come back to all this later. And this one who wrote the book carried it up and showed it and read it before the Lord of sheep, and implored him on their account and besought him on their account. And he showed all the doings of the shepherds and gave testimony before him against all the shepherds, and took the actual book and laid it down beside him and departed. Chapter 90. And I saw till that in this manner 35 shepherds undertook the pasturing, and they severally completed their periods, as did the first. And others received them unto their hands, and pastured them for their period, each shepherd in his own period. And after that, in my vision, all the birds of heaven coming, the eagles, the vultures, the kites, the ravens. But the eagles led all the birds, and began to devour those sheep, and pick out their eyes, and to devour their flesh. And the sheep cried out, because their flesh was being devoured by the birds. And as for me, I looked and lamented in my sleep over that shepherd who pastured the sheep. And I saw until those sheep were devoured by the dogs, and eagles, and kites, and left neither flesh, nor skin, nor sinew remaining on them. To only their bones stood there, and their bones too fell to the earth, and the sheep became few. And I saw till that 23 had undertaken the pasturing. and completed in their several period 58 times. But behold, lambs were born by those white sheep, and they began to open their eyes and to see, and to cry to the sheep. Yea, they cried to them, but they did not hearken to what they said to them, but were exceedingly deaf, and their eyes were exceedingly blinded. And I saw in the vision how ravens flew upon those lambs, and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep in pieces, and devoured them. And I saw till horns grew upon those lambs, and the ravens cast down their horns. And I saw till there sprouted a great horn on one of those sheep, and their eyes were opened, and it looked at them, and their eyes opened, and it cried to the sheep, and the ram saw it, and all ran to it. And notwithstanding all this, those eagles and vultures and ravens and kites still kept tearing the sheep and swooping down upon them and devouring them, till the sheep remained silent. But the rams lamented and cried out, and those ravens fought and battled with it, and sought to lay low its horn, but they had no power over it. And the eagles and vultures and ravens and kites were gathered together, and there came with them all the sheep of the field. Yea, they all came together and helped each other to break that horn of that ram. And there I saw till a great sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep proceeded against the beast, against all the beasts of the field to slay them. And all the beasts and birds of heaven fled before their face. And I saw that man who wrote the book according to the command of the Lord, until he opened that book concerning the destruction with those 12 last shepherds had wrought, and showed that they had destroyed much more than their predecessors before the Lord of sheep. And I saw till the Lord of sheep came unto them, and took in his hand the staff of his wrath, and smote the earth, and the earth clave asunder, and all the beasts and all the birds of heaven fell from among those sheep, and were swallowed up in the earth, and it covered them. And I saw till a throne was erected in the pleasant land, and the Lord of the sheep sat himself thereon. And the other took the sealed books, and opened those books before the Lord of the sheep. And the Lord called those men the 7 first white ones, and commanded that they should bring before him, beginning with the first star, which led the way, and all the stars whose privy members were like those of horses. And they were brought before, and they brought them all before him. And he said to that man who wrote before him, being one of those 7 white ones, and said unto him, take those 70 shepherds, to whom I delivered the sheep, and who taking them on their authority slew more than I commanded. And behold, they were all bound, and I saw, and they all stood before him. And the judgment was held first over the stars. And they were judged and found guilty, and went to the place of condemnation. And they were cast into an abyss full of fire and flaming, and full of pillars of fire. And those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they were cast into that fiery abyss. And I saw at that time how a like abyss was opened in the midst of the earth, full of fire. And they brought those blinded sheep, and they were all judged and found guilty, and cast into this fiery abyss, and they burned. Now this abyss was to the right of that house. And I saw those sheep burning, and their bones burning. And I stood up to see till they folded up that house, and carried off all the pillars, and all the beams, and ornaments of that house were at the same time folded up with it. And they carried it off, and laid it in a place in the south of the land. And I saw till the Lord of sheep brought a new house, greater and loftier than the first, and set it up in the place of the first, which had been folded up. All its pillars were new, and its ornaments were new, and larger than those of the first, which the old one which he had taken away. And the sheep were within it. And I saw all the sheep which had been left, and all the beasts on the earth, and all the birds of the heaven, falling down and doing homage to those sheep, and making petition to, and obeying and obeying them in everything. And thereafter, those three who were clothed in white, and seized me by my hand, who had taken me up before, and the hand of that ram also seizing hold of me. They took me up, and they set me down in the midst of those sheep before the judgment took place. And those sheep were all white, and their wool abundant and clean. And all that had been destroyed, and dispersed, and all the beasts of the field, and all the birds of the heaven assembled in that house. And the Lord of the sheep rejoiced with great joy, because they were all good, and had returned to his house. And I saw till they laid down that sword which had been given to the sheep, and they brought it back into the house, and it was sealed before the presence of the Lord. And all the sheep were invited into that house, but it held them not. And the eyes of them were all open, and they saw the good. And there was not one among them that did not see. And after that house was large, and broad and very full, I saw that a white bull was born, with large horns. And all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the air feared him, and made petition to him all the time. And I saw till all the generations were formed. All the time of. And I saw till all the generations were transformed. And they all became white bulls. And the first amongst them became a lamb. And that lamb became a great animal, and had great black horns on its head. And the Lord of the sheep, and the Lord of the sheep rejoiced over it, and over all the oxen. And I slept in their midst, and I awoke and saw everything. This is the vision while I slept. And I awoke and blessed the Lord of righteousness, and gave him glory. Then I wept with a great weeping, and my tears stayed not, till I could no longer endure it. When I saw, they flowed on account of what I had seen. For everything shall come and be fulfilled. And all the deeds of men in their order were shown to me. On that night I remember the first dream, and because of it I wept, and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. And that is the end of book 4. Book 5 is next. We'll wait to do that another day, but we're just going to get to go back and elaborate on some of this now. Let's go back to the very beginning. So page 70 to 74, there's 13 pages. Gonna do the best general breakdown and review I can do right now, and see how much we can get done in the next 11 minutes. Not done at 7, but just gonna see how much we can do within the hour. Okay. So first, this chapter is going to take me I'm going to have to actually go into the scripture. I know where most of it's at. I'm going to have to mark every single place where these events take place. From the very first beginning. So let's talk about the earth being destroyed and heaven falling down, right? Coming down, right? So if you understand how that vision proceeds from his mouth, how I looked at it, is there several ways. Obviously, there's the most obvious literal. The firmament came down in circumference. Once again, it makes sense because the heaven is circular. If the earth is, if you're fitting a round peg into a square hole, right? And the roundness is greater than the square, it's going to push, it's just going to cover it all. The whole square is covered and it's pushed down and smushed. Not to say that the earth is a square, but if the earth is roundish, then it's even easier to cover. But it's that sort of thing. And the abyss has no known depth. So it would be able to devour the earth. Heaven would be in the place of the earth, and that would be it. Um, with that said, that is the closest thing in line to what somebody like Cyrus Schofield may have read and based a major premise of his rapture doctrine upon. Um, it's not out of the scope to say that the man didn't or did not read the book of, I mean, I'm sure he read the Book of Enoch. I'm almost quite positive. Um, when you read this Bible, the Schofield Reference Bible, which is nothing but a King James Version Bible with like notes, with his own notes in it, uh, um, his understanding for certain things, you realize, like as you read the Book of Enoch, comes from the Book of Enoch. We're gonna move forward real quick, right? And we're just gonna do a quick brush of that story. The entire story is about, so first two things. Number one, did you notice that even though it denotes that the black heifer goes off with the red bull, and I'm going to read it to you so that way you understand. And it says here, verse 4, and the black bull gored the red one and pursued him over the earth. And thereupon I could no longer see that red bull. But that black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw many oxen proceed from him, which resembled and followed him. Now stop right there. And that cow, that first one, who's the heifer, which went from the presence of that first bull in order to seek that red one, but found him not, lamented with a great lamentation over him, and sought him. Now, here's the great part of this: is that, do you notice how it says that cow, that first one, went from the presence of that first bull? That first bull is the white bull. Now, why that's so important is because this is indicative that she was not with the second bull, who is the black bull. The third bull being the red bull, who is the one that gets killed. Now, the symbology of this and the irony of this, I'll speak to many different things. I'm gonna try to get to how the layman minds of so-called European Anglo-Saxon white people have, when they read the Book of Enoch and they read this story in particular, how when they read the three bulls that were with the man that was a bull, who used to be a bull, how it said that one of them was white like him, one was black, and one was red. Well, the denotion is actually the same denotion of the very first story. I can't get too carried away in that. I have to go in chronological order, so let me just keep it in order. This is about the different people. So you could argue, one could say and contest me, and I would the least I would be, the most I could do is just be silent and not say anything. You know what I'm saying? That's like the most I could try to do. The least I could do, though, is capitulate. You know what I mean? And say, you know what? That's valid. The black bull could be representative and indicative of Cain, but it is more so indicative of the first people. Now, why this is so incredible is because the idea of the white bull, when we hear it, if we only denote the fact that Noah was born white and red looking, well, first off, he was born funny looking. So we know that when it says white bull, it's not speaking on the skin color or the visage of the individual. White is a purity sign. In the very background of me, there's a little bit of light that's shining on the wall that's already white. Okay. Now, if you didn't already know this, light that reflects upon any object brightens it and makes it look whitish. When the darkness settles onto anything, the darkness makes it look black. So the symbology of light and dark and their symbology of good and evil, this is where not only the Arabs, I won't say stole the idea, but they borrowed the idea from. And not only that, it's also symbolic of the people that are still here. Now, mind the fact, I haven't even worked into the concept that a bull is much larger, is a much larger animal than a sheep. Okay, off tops, just on the muscle. So when you talk about that, it's speaking that the first people that were created were larger than we are now. Can you dig that? Can you hold on to that for a second and put that in your pocket? Number two, with them being larger in size, outside of the fact that there's a denotion of good and evil, and red being blood, do you denote the fact that the black bull denote he has oxen? Oxen come from him. Okay, many oxen proceeded from him. Can you dig that? So when you understand that the changing of the stalls that I'm going to speak on here in a moment, that happens once Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden and they began to have children, and their children begin to breed with what? That's right, the oxen of the field, and they begin to have. It's a deep concept. There's a lot going on. I'm starting to realize that a lot of what I was saying was absolutely right, but some of it was out of the line of the events of how it took place, and there's other events that complement or overlap what I'm saying. A case in point, how we know that these are different peoples. One is a white bull, one is a black bull. The red bull, once again, symbolic of blood. You can say that it's symbolic of Abel also, right? And you can say that the black cow that goes to seek the red bull is the mourning of Eve over the death of Abel, and that the white bull comforts her, which is Adam. And the white bull that resembles him after that is one called Seth, because in the scripture, I can read it to you right now, just real quickly, real quick. I'll be real fast about it. Genesis chapter 5, verse 3. And Adam lived 200 years, 230 years, and begat a son after his own form and after his own image, and called his name Seth. So, and I could read the whole bloodline of Seth, and I could really carry into how these are the different little white bulls that are begotten, right? Now let's just skip forth to the stars of heaven that come down, turn themselves into bulls, but are endowed like horses. Why this is so important is because, once again, I could go right now to different prophets who speak on the endowment of different characters from the Assyrians to the Egyptians, and liken their endowment to that of horses. It's all throughout the scripture. So the hung like a horse thing actually comes from this part in the Book of Enoch. I swear to God. I swear to God, he'd kill me right now if I'm freaking lying. He'd kill me right now. I'm not lying to you. This is all right here. That's a wicked concept that people can't even understand. It's a construct they could never understand. Right on? I could go into the scripture of the doting of the women over these men and all types of shit. And really break it down, but then I would lose my point of Enoch. So we're not going to lose Enoch. Furthermore, as we continue to read, notice how when the stars get the oxen, not the cows, but the oxen who begot cows, can you dig it? But the oxen who are from what? The black bull, who are what? Different people. Can you dig it? When they have children with them, they beget what? Elephants, camels and asses, or as people know, donkeys. Why this is important? Because it doesn't dictate that that's a different genera, that's a different genetic species. But what it's bringing forth to us is that the elephants are symbolic, have to be symbolic of the giants. The asses are like that of the hero class, right? Or the men of renown. And the camels, I'm not sure yet. I haven't figured it out. I'm like, maybe like the sage or like magical type dudes, guys who were like, like experts in witchcraft. I'm not certain. I'm not for certain. But they're symbolic of different things. The first and the last, I'm almost positive. The elephants, I'm quite sure, is symbolic of giants. When it speaks on the fact that their own mothers, listen to this. Listen to this. If we're listening to this story, right, it's not broken down to us earlier in the story that their own mothers turned on them. Their own mothers didn't love them, couldn't love them, realized they bore abominations and tried to kill them. And in turn, what did their children do? Turned on them. So maybe that's an even greater insight to the fallout that came between man and giant and all the provisions that the giants were devouring. Maybe their mothers realized, like, they're going to eat us out of existence. There will be none of us. We'll all starve to death. And I bore this giant thing. I bore this abomination. But his father taught me the secrets of this, this, and this. So I'll use all that witchcraft and sorcery in an attempt to kill my own child. Not to say that they were successful, but you can't say that they didn't attempt to do this because it's written here. Now, with that said, the angels speed up the process. Okay? One angel comes here, binds Azazel hands and foot. He's the first star that fell. Now, mind you, it never says that the first star mated with the women. It just says that the other stars that fell from heaven mated with the women. I'm going to give Azazel that much. With that said, though, another angel from heaven throws stones from the heavens. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. That could be a literal sense that he killed giants from the heavens, right? And then also gave to them swords to kill each other with. So they all began to kill each other. And there was this begins. So there's more understanding to it now. It's like it wasn't just, the angels taught their children how to use these weapons. It was like, no, the angels came down here and showed men all this wickedness. Didn't show their children the same wickedness. They didn't have to. They were gigantic. So they just had they could naturally take over stuff. But once they were given swords from these angels, weapons to kill each other with from this angel, it changes the entire dynamic. Because now they're introduced to shedding their own blood. The blood that's been shed from men to men. And I still will boast that there were no organized, stringent wars in those days. There's no indication of it. Even when this is written, how it's written, there's no indication of that. The only indication that there were kingdoms is that after the Tower of Babel, only after the Tower of Confusion, are kingdoms reestablished. We hear about kingdoms before the Tower of Babel because we hear about what's his name? Made himself a giant. Nimrod. We hear about Nimrod making himself a giant, and his kingdom was Babylon. But if you read the bloodline and understand, he doesn't come until after a certain time. He's after the Tower of Confusion. He's after the split of the earth. That's a very important, it's a monumental factor. Okay? That's huge. And for anybody to try to overlook it is disrespectful. Anyway, carrying on and going forward. You have this concept where these angels have these bastard children with these women. Their children start to kill each other. The earth is full of destruction and chaos. The Most High God gave a vision to Enoch, showed Enoch what he was going to do at first. Because Enoch was born, it was like being born in the hood, but worse, way worse. You understand what I'm talking about? Like, Like, if there was ever a good place and like you seen like the infomercials of it and you were born somewhere rough and you see like a nice place and you're like, I wish I could live there, it would be like Enoch was born in like that shitty place and like heard of how the earth used to be. Okay. In this vision, he sees what the Most High's first initial plan is. Forget it. I'm just going to crush the whole earth and just push it into the abyss. Done. What does Enoch do? Has a terrible vision, right? You can say it was a prophetic vision, if you will. His grandfather Malalel is there with him. Tells the young man, because you're a believer. Not to say that Malalel wasn't, but understand this is an indication that belief was still applicable back then. Not that God worship. I'm not leaning toward God's worship, but to believe that the Most High was real is a concept that people have to accept. Once again, you don't read about God worship until after the flood, and there's no indication of it in this book. Until it only brings up that people would worship things as gods that were actually demons. It doesn't say that they did do that. Right. The whole problem with the flood is the corruption of the earth. So we need to recognize, understand, and put into place and context these basic things. With that said and going forward, did you guys also notice how there was another one who came, smacked the, okay, so yeah, that's why I had a little confused. The one guy, or excuse me, angel, gives him the sword. The other angel throws the stones and breaks the head of the stars, smites them with the rocks, binds them and throws them into the abyss. This last angel, which is an epic thing, because now we have to really look at. See, Noah says the angel revealed to him the secret. Okay, so apparently, or a secret. But to be given a secret to do something, it means that it was information that was hidden before, not known of before. Now I need y'all to understand. It makes it clear that the bull that was in the vessel and the bulls with him, the man that used to be a bull, they are covered by the vessel. The only way you could be covered by something is if you are inside of it. So that means that what? The ark has a roof, or has a canopy type. It is a submarine or a submarine type mechanism. I can't stress this enough. Going forward, what happens when they get off? Different genera is born from them. Now, why different genera is born from them? Because the creatures that were able to escape into the middle of the planet, the breaking up of the tower, or not the breaking up of the tower, but the breaking up of the earth, and the separation of the people. And this is something that's funny, because as you read about the different genera, right, it's talking about when it talks about lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swines, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, and ravens, it's speaking on the different genetic anomalies that occur once the creatures from Middle Earth re-emerge. And then it ends by saying, among them was born a white bull, Abraham. So somebody who was in larger stature himself. Oh, glad we know that. And they began to do what? Fight one another. But that white bull was born amongst them and begat a wild ass. You know who that wild is? Ishmael. And begat a white bull with it. You know who that white bull is? Isaac. But that white bull, which was born from him, begat a black wild boar, who is Esau, and a white sheep, who is Jacob. And the former, the boar, begot many boars, but the sheep begot 12 sheep, his 12 sons, the 12 tribes. And the 12 sheep did what? They gave them up to the Ishmaelites, right? And the Ishmaelites, the asses, gave the sheep up to the who? The wolves. The wolves are the Egyptians. I'm trying to break it down. Respect what I'm doing, please. And then what? It breaks down the entire story of Moses, how he leads the sheep. See, if you already understood this, look, if you already know what I'm about to say right now, just say Meech, I totally got it, and I won't even waste time of telling y'all all this. And I'll wait a whole 20 seconds because I don't want to bore nobody to death. Okay, so we're all on the same page, and I'm pretty much informing you about what's going on here, even if you might already understand it. All right, man. So you're so funny. Okay. 1 moment, sister. As I was saying, the sheep does what? He goes, he runs off, he's with the wild asses. The wild asses are who? Right, Ishmaelites. Thank you very much. Going on down. Now what's funny is because if you really look at how this is laid out into us, there's a reason why. The reason why I want to read all this to you is because there's a reason why the Most High God would tell somebody to say, I have only come here for the sheep of the lost house of the lost house of the sheep of Israel. There we go. Bam. Why would he? Why do you think that's it's a crucial one? It's a crucial junction. All these things are so important. Anyway, we can keep it pushing. Now, notice the Most High makes himself known to the people. Okay? We can skip past the fact that the wolves, who are the Egyptians, follow the people into the Red Sea, get swallowed up. We can skip past all that. We already know what that's about. Okay? Let's talk about when the sheep ascended to the summit of the lofty rock. Bam, and he comes back down. And all the sheep are blinded now, right? The larger number of them. That's the 2/3 of them. Okay, let's just go ahead and put that in perspective. 2/3, believe me, 2/3 of the people, probably or greater, okay, were the larger number of them who fell away. With that being said, the sheep becomes a man. Did you notice that? He also, like Noah, became a man in his life. Did you notice that Abraham didn't become a man? Did you notice that Isaac didn't become a man? I'm just throwing this out there. Did you notice that Adam didn't even become a man in his life? And all these other characters I can name. Keeping it pushing. Then the 2 sheep that is talking about who led the people, that's Joshua and Caleb. That's the indication that when the people, when Moses and Aaron, I'm not sure. The only thing I can say is that they were perfect in a sense with the Most High, like they had become perfect with him. I have no idea what it means. None whatsoever. But if I had to say, like, if it was like my wildest stab in the dark, like what's been on my mind about it, is that animals don't have the same sensibilities that a man does, right? And maybe he's lost the sensibility of the animal. Maybe he's truly become a man. And in essence, the sheep are gullible animals, and they need a shepherd. They need someone to show them how to live their lives. A man, just a man in general, would not need that. A woman would not need that. She's a person. She's a human. You follow what I'm saying? So I think these are just indication of the guidance needed in the life, and then just your overall stance with the Most High. It's really an epic thing. Notice that he called the angels of heaven who came down white men. And they were all considered white men, the 7 white men. Now, there's an indication that they're wearing white clothes later, but still, we could argue that they're white-looking men because Noah was the white-looking man with the red tent, and it was said that he resembled the angels of heaven and their children. So even when we look at things from that perspective, we still have to take it, not just with a grain of salt, but we have to really be eyes wide open, and then our mind has to be open to everything that we know. Like we have to go into like the furthest corners of our mind, information that we don't normally access, and we have to access it and pull it into remembrance and then see where it possibly fits. Which is why I say everything we know, everything sister, should be applied to every single thought, every single time. The things that don't apply to that thought, you antiquate them. It doesn't matter. But the things that do apply to that thought, you should apply every single thing that you know to it every time, because it'll give you more insight. And with that being said, Joshua and Caleb were the only two. Remember, when the spies were sent out to spy the land of Canaan or Canaan, they were the only two. When they all came back, the other 10 people or the other 10 guys with them all were terrified. They were like, the giants eat the people of the land. Everything is gigantic. And they struck fear into the heart of the people. And the Most High said, those dudes are not going to come into seeing the promised land, their whole generation. You follow what I'm saying? He said, except for Caleb and Joshua, because they're the only ones who didn't fold like a wet blanket. So the two leaders are Caleb and Joshua. Caleb is his bloodline is instrumental in the book of the Judges. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say it's one of the people directly from his bloodline. That's the first judge. If I'm not mistaken. With that said, you go into the promised land now, right? And then it speaks on all these different animals, and it speaks on the dogs, the foxes, and the wild boars. Now we have to remember the wild boar, well, the black wild boar, but let's just imply the wild boar in general, could always be in relation to Esau. Now, the reason why they would have an issue or a reason as to attack the people of Israel is because their birthright, they may have felt, was stolen from them or snubbed from them, even though they gave it away for a bowl of lentils. Their father gave it away for a bowl of lentils when he was a younger man. With that said, the dogs and the foxes, I can't identify, because it's not identified with people born who those in particular bloodlines are. Okay, there's not an indication as to who they are. When we read about the lamb that gets turned into a ram the first time, that's King Saul, okay, the Benjamite, who was a head taller than everybody. Then when we read about that ram trampling over the people, it's indication that he did whatever he wanted to do, right on, and he was about to lead the people down the wrong path. Word is bond, and what's funny about that is that it says that the lamb went with another lamb, right, and was raised into being a ram. It compares King David to a ram, not a sheep, right? Bam. And it says that after the dogs, the Philistines, that's the only group I was able to identify, within all that, because that's who killed him. The dogs are the Philistines, and the dogs bring down the first ram, and then the second ram comes up, right? Now, what's funny is that it even compares King Solomon to being a ram, though I don't think much of King Solomon. And when it speaks on that, you know what I mean? It just speaks on how the ram has the house of the Lord built. Then it speaks on how the sheep fall away, right? And how Elijah is the last of the prophets during his days, because Jezebel, demon-infested woman, had them all killed. Remember that? And what went down was he was taken up to heaven, and he was brought to wherever Enoch dwells. How we know that? Because it says right here, In verse 52. And one of them was saved and was not slain, and it sped away and cried aloud over the sheep, and they sought to slay it. But the Lord of sheep saved it from the sheep and brought it up to me and caused it to dwell there. Stop right there. So it had to be saved from the other sheep. So this is indication as to why those sheep that were blinded, who were found guilty, these are those same sheep. The same sheep that are pursuing them are more than likely the same sheep that were blinded, larger in number in the wilderness. Remember that, okay? Oh my goodness. What else? What else? So they're given over to the Assyrians and all these other groups. Those are pretty much most of the wild beasts. The 70 shepherds, I'm not totally 100,000% sure, but if there might be something in the Apocrypha that leans to that. But I'll have to get to that later, because a larger, greater part of what we read about then, as with the shepherds, is, I think a lot of it really has to do with the people who've led Black people over a certain period of time. So let's say 70 generations, which is supposed to be one of the terms of judgment. Let's say a generation is a lifetime and not what we've been taught to think it is, which is like 18 years. So let's say a generation is your whole lifetime. Let's say 70 years is the average life. 490 years. We'll even round it up to a full 500. So let's say from a certain time till now, let's say we're still waiting to get into the 500 or the 490 year mark. We haven't even got there yet. Let's assume that much, right? All those shepherds we were hearing about were people who have misled the people up until this point, and have done so on purpose, and felt good about it, and they feel good about it, and they don't give a damn. Why this is important is because it speaks to the level of misunderstandings that we have right now as a people. It speaks to everything. It really does put into perspective as to why certain Black people are so quick to fleece other Black people. It really does. It makes it make sense where I'm like, damn. Now this dude kind of seems like one of these messed up shepherds. There's only one per generation. So who the shepherd is for our generation, like this is what I'm saying. We'd have to find the most influential Black person right now who's actually us to be able to point out, you're the shepherd that's gone wrong. Let's imagine, and I'm just being facetious. Imagine the shepherd was Kanye West. He would fit the mold. I mean, I love Kanye. That's my dude. I love Kanye to death. I really do. But Kanye would fit the description of somebody who's dragged his people into the wrong direction. He would easily fit that. Easily. Once again, they have to be you to represent you. So you can't go picking some half-breed nobody. You got to pick the people, dog. Right. Because guys go out here, I'm reading it to you. If the eagles, the kite, the vulture, and the raven, these are birds. Consider the flying creatures of heaven. Consider the birds of heaven. But we also understand that genera was born from those who left off of the ship. And I guarantee you, they're all considered Gentiles. The term Gentile, it should be synonymous with humanoid. When you read the word Gentile in the Bible, Substitute the word humanoid there every once in a while in your mind, if you're really having a hard time understanding what you're reading. And then you'll understand that you're not reading about regular freaking human beings. They're not people. But that would also give indication that what? That Demetrius has been saying is true. That all of us are what? Part Middle Earth thing. Ooh. Another indication as to why to call us animals. Ooh. They don't want to hear it. The first creation, Adam, he fell off. He became an animal because he had no discipline. Only animals practice things out of sheer instinct. You know better. So now I get to compare you to an animal. But not a dark animal, a light animal. An animal that represents good things, not bad things, because you don't represent negativity. Yes, Gentile equals humanoid. How I know this to be true? Name one instance. Go find one. If you think I'm lying, go find an instance where they call Gentiles men. The word man might be used in conjunction when they're speaking about the Gentiles, but they never call Gentiles men. Never do they call them men. Never. Or women. Just call them Gentiles. Right. Humanoids. Straight up. Do they want to hear that? Of course not. Of course not. Let's keep it pushing. And I'm giving a real, I'm giving, this is such the fastest run through of like, he had a vision of the whole Bible. Before I get any further, do you guys realize he had a vision of the entire scripture? He had a vision about his entire bloodline going forward. Wow. This is crazy. People don't even respect. Forget respect. People don't even realize the level of information that's in this book. Now, if I compared the white Anglo-Saxon to the humanoid structure of whatever the eagle represents, then would people understand that that eagle that plucked out the eyes of the goat is not reminiscent of, no, not just the so-called Roman eagle, your Japhetite Gentilic cousins, okay, who were overtaken by savage white barbarians from caves. No, not them, but the eagle that represents this country and how they continue to devour your people until this day. Come on. They don't want to hear it. What about how the house is folded up? Let's just read about that. The house that gets folded up, I'm skipping so far forward. The house that gets folded up in judgment, that's the earth getting replaced, and the new house that gets brought forth. Okay? This is so, man, it's so epic. There's so much going on. They can't believe it because they've never seen it. But why is building a house not magical? What's not magical about it? What process? Even if there's physical action required, what's not miraculous about it? Is it not a miracle that when the wind blows, your house doesn't fall down to pieces? And sure, you can chalk that up to structural integrity. But what is that? Is that just stability? Is that the actual condition and health and composition of the materials used? Is it level ground? Like, so when people say things, they don't even realize what they're saying most of the time. They just say stuff. I'm trying to bring it to y'all. The Book of Enoch is the closest thing to, if there was no scripture ever, nothing, and they only had the Book of Enoch, You wouldn't know what to eat. You wouldn't know how to live your life per se, but you would understand that the Most High God is still righteous. You would get and understand that. You would follow that. Now, did you also notice that every animal, every animal, every animal outside of the sheep that's mentioned after the flood is an unclean animal? The boar is unclean. Okay? Swine is unclean. Whatever you want to call them. Pigs. You already know you can't eat no dog. You shouldn't. You shouldn't want to. A lion or a tiger or a hyena or a wolf. Can you dig it? The kite, the raven, the eagle. Huh? Can you feel me? Or the vulture? All dirty. All dirty animals. So even when you look at the understanding is that they're unclean. If you understand the basis of scripture and how things go. Now, did Enoch know before life changed that those animals were going to be considered unclean? I need you to understand this. The book of Enoch was written a long time before the scripture was established. Damn it. Okay? How would he know that sheep are clean animals? Bulls are clean animals. How would he know that? Huh? How would he know that? Right. The Most High gave him the vision, obviously. So the Most High God understood what composition he would find acceptable later or in a latter time to make presentable in the dream. Man, this is so deep. There's so many different layers of things that I could point out. Once again, there's a bunch of different stuff in scripture. Let me just run to something real fast. About Abraham. Now, if Abraham is a white bull, what does that make his two brothers that he is triplets to? Let me go ahead and read it to you. Verse 25 of the Genesis chapter 11. And Korah lived after he had begotten Terah 125 years, and begot sons and daughters, and he died. And Terah lived 70 years, and begot Abram, Nachor, and Haran. Now stop right there. Now, before anybody gets carried away, we would have to understand and know the composition of what's the word I'm looking for? The Canaanites. We would have to know what kind of animal they would represent. Because why that's so important is because Lot has children with the Canaanite people, right? But the Syrians become overtaken by Gentiles. So we would have to know what sort of Gentile or what animal creature would be representative or indicative of their characters and people. To understand, see, this is why it's so important, is because it's like the clean and dirty animals are mixing, right? Can a bad tree bear good fruit, and can a good tree bear bad fruit? There's so many different questions it makes you ask. There's so many different things that come to my mind. I mean, I can't really isolate any one thing that just makes me, feel, like, oh, this is it. But it's like I get closer and closer every day to feeling like something might lead me to, that moment, that breakthrough or whatever. But I'm still working at it. But yeah, I just wanted to show. I had to read that again. Abraham is a triplet, so his brothers. If Abraham is a bull, Guess what? Guess what? Guess what? Indication that I'm right again. Shem, Ham, and Japheth were what? Bulls. Now you could say, you could argue that Aram, who begot Lot, was a black bull. Okay? You could say that he was a black bull who begot other black-like creatures. You could argue that. I wouldn't be in a position to contest that. But I would be able to say that Abraham believed that Lot was righteous. The Most High God never said that he. There's no indication that the Most High felt that Lot was righteous. There's no indication. There's no indication of that. Abraham had a personal relationship with Lot. Okay, he felt that his nephew was righteous. Big, big difference. Big difference. And when people can accept these types of things, these sorts of things, they're going to be in a much better position. Let's talk about white and black again. Can't stress this enough. Tomorrow, when you get up and you're doing whatever, I want you to turn on the light in your house. And I want you to look at everything that the light is reflecting on. And I want you to get something that's dark color, something that's medium color, and something that's very light in color. Shiny objects if you can help it. And I want you to turn the light on. And I want you to notice how the light makes all their surface looks white. Okay? Then in like manner, I want you to get to a place in your residence that there's not very much light at. And I want you to put all some of those same objects in that very dark place. Now, apparently, it doesn't change their color. But if it's dark enough, you may not, especially if there's enough depth, you may not be able to actually see them at a certain distance and tell what color they are. And that is the point that I'm trying to make, is that white and black are not indicative of no skin colors, because once again, Noah was born not looking like anybody, and Noah was born with white skin. So if being born with white skin was normal, it wouldn't even brought it up. Right. It would have never made a big deal out of it. So that's another indication that I know that white and black are not indications of skin color. But when the white man read this book, he said, see right there was a white bull that was white like him, and there's a black one and a red one, as opposed to them realizing the symbology of what red means and what white and black means. And notice that the blood, right on, is what's coming, And if you understand the first part of that real symbol, if the Most High God says that the streets shall run with blood, then it's almost indication that blood is going to run, maybe not off the ends of the earth now, but it's that type of concept. It's that sort of understanding that you have to apply to it. You have to really, not, I won't say reach, but if there's an implication to be made, you should make the implication until the information denies that implication a possibility of existence. I take no thing off the table until I know it's bullshit, is what I'm pretty much saying. What else? Because we went through an entire book. And I really didn't plan on reading the entire thing like that, but I just was all in it reading. What else? Story of the Bible, blah, 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 blah. People get forgiven of their sins. Certain people get judged and go to hell. What else? New Earth. Yep. What else? Oh, did you notice? We'll be long dead. We'll be long dead. Did you notice that everybody became white bulls again? Correct on what you're saying, Stephen. And no problem, sister. I mean, for me, it's just like one of those things where I'm like, it really doesn't matter, like I know I'm not going to read this next part in one hit, because if I read it all in one hit, then we're done. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to read what is that? Like 22 pages. If I have to do 22 pages the next time, I will, but I'm not trying to do that. I'll try to break that down into two pieces if I can help it, if you guys will let me. I'm not trying to do that. It might sound lazy, but it's not. That's just me thinking about the entirety of all of it. No. Anyhow, where am I at? Um, Damn it. I'm all gassed out right now. I pretty much said all the stuff that was on my mind. Yeah, I've touched it all. From the sick jokes about horses and people's growing area to uh to a new earth. Yeah, I've touched it all. Yeah, yeah. The symbology. That's the one thing I will hit on. The symbology is so heavy, so that way, it's right. We all become white bulls. We'll be long dead. You don't have to worry about that. We'll be long dead. But the idea is that those that are left will commingle and create the white bull. And it says the first of them shall become a lamb, right on, who shall grow great black horns on his head and become a different kind of creature. So you know what? It's all good. It's all good. It's all just part of the thing. You know, Enoch gets up and cries to the Most High God, says thank you, and then he remembered his first vision. Right. So which one is worse? Everybody dying by water and flood? So listen, Enoch seen it. Look, bro, you can get one of two things. Either I kill everybody on earth right now and knock it all down, or, or, or I kill almost everything on earth, let them all come back, they screw it all up again, and then I take everybody out one more time. So Enoch picked the long, drug out motion. You know? The Most High understood that if I leave somebody on the planet, if I leave anything on earth, there leaves a chance, there leaves the possibility for sin to arise again. And it did. And now look at us. It is a horrible place that people have descended into because there's no coming back from certain things. Certain things you don't come back from, you know, which is why, once again, I will never contend that I want people. I love brother. His name is Israelite man or Holy Teachings. Love the brother to death. I really do. Um, One of the things I find most awkward about some of the things that he says, though, and maybe he'll correct himself in the future because he'll realize, you know, he'll say stuff like, you know, the kind of people that a black man should get married to or a woman should be married to, and it's like, does he not realize or does he not know? Like, just for example, to encourage all men to marry only virgins, right? Let's just follow me. Do you realize King David lived thousands of years ago? And not one of the wives that I know that he got, unless they were given to him and she was a virgin, none of the chicks that you know of off top, none of his first wives are virgins. His very first wife, Abigail or whatever her name is. She comes from the one dude who was hella rude, and King David was gonna kill this nigga and take all of his shit anyway, but the chick came out there and was hella cool. He found out old boy died, and he sent for the chick. She's not a virgin. King Saul's daughter, when he had the damn competition for the 100 foreskins, okay? She was already married to a man. Her husband was so in love, he followed her to like the damn gate. You feel me? You know what I'm talking about? You feel me? Right. Right. She not a virgin. King Solomon's mama was married to Uriah the Hittite. She's not a virgin. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? My hands are tied. My hands are hella, like my hands are tied. Like I want to rock with you, but I can't rock with you because what you're saying is unrealistic. And this is for a dude who's thousands of years ago. And that shit didn't apply to him. So how can you open your mouth and say that it applies to us now, where the environment is way worse? It's incredulous. So, right, the fact that you reach out to people, number two, my other thing about the stuff that you do, you reach out to people the Messiah wouldn't piss on if they were on fire, wouldn't even stop to look at him. You ask people like that to come out the world. The Messiah don't want nothing to do with them, bro. It's just amazing. I'm not going to beg, ask, plead, grovel, nothing to a bunch of bastard sinners. Okay, I'm a sinner. All right? I have my own issues I'm trying to work out with the Most High. I'm not going to plead for people who are worse than me or could be better than me to stop doing what they're doing. They'll be okay. The only people I'm worried about are the people that want to be saved. That's it. There is no saving. So you can't help somebody that don't want to be helped. You can't save nobody that don't want to be saved. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. There are people who sue fire departments, who sue ambulance medics and shit like that all the time for resuscitating them. Did you know that, y'all? Fucking people get sued all the time for this shit. Okay? This is why they'll ask people, do they have my stepdad had one. This is how I know. It's your last rites paper, right on. And what it pretty much says is that if I go out and I'm past a certain point, you won't try to save my life. You will let me die. There's people who have those sorts of orders because they have terminal illnesses or they have a certain way of thinking. However, with that said, that doesn't matter. What's more important is that you need to realize, y'all, I'm not going to reach out to somebody who I know does not think that they need what it is that I'm going to offer. I'm not. Why would I do that? That's stupid. That's foolish. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of energy. Every once in a while when I do this stuff right here, I get frustrated because I'm like, do people not realize how often I repeat myself? Like I say the same things over and over and over and over. I really do. If you actually go back and listen to most of my videos, I say the same things different ways, hoping that what I'm saying will eventually stick and it won't be elusive to the listener. You know, a lot of what I believe that people go through though is willful ignorance. Is they willfully deny what it is that I'm saying, so that way the most objective truth that they would have to submit themselves to, they can now still ignore. Case in point, for people who have children that aren't black all the way, my son's not full black. His mom is mixed, so that he's at least part mixed, dog. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Can we say that right there? And so for me to be able to say that, but you have a guy like, let's say, like Tariq Nasheed, whose wife is mixed, his kids, as far as I'm concerned, are mixed. As black as he wants to say they are, they're mixed people. Right. Because they're not blacker than they're not blacker than children who have two black parents. You're not gonna, you can't finagle that, no way, shape, or form. And when I speak with brothers like that and they won't even level with me, not realizing I'm more in your boat than you realize, I can't rock with you. You feel me? So I'm not gonna throw a fucking buoy to somebody like that. I want them to drown. I want them to drown with concrete shoes on as fast as possible. No love, no mercy. I feel nothing for them. You think I feel something for people that have made it their point and mission to be, hold on, but they were blinded, had their eyes poked out by the eagle. Now the eagle's telling you which way to go. What the fuck? Did you hear me? The eagle poked your eyes out and is now telling you which way to go. And you believe them after they poked your eyes out? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I hate it because it's sad to see people not admit that. Hey, you know what? Maybe there's something wrong with what we've been taught. The Book of Enoch tells us several things. The first and foremost, the most important thing that he breaks down to us is that there is a Most High God. There is one. It's the first thing he breaks down to us. There's nothing more important than that, nothing more monumental than that. Okay? And when you can wrap your brain around that there's a creator, see, because this is the problem with most of them. They'll say, I'm that nigga. Okay, so if you're that nigga, what does that make the creator? He's that nigga times whatever, times infinite. Right. And they can't even understand and put in their most humane ways. Okay? They can't even base it out to something that they can actually grasp their pea brain around. They can actually put into the concept that they understand. And yet, the Most High God is like, I want my glory and praise. And these people want to be just like that. And where do they think they get that concept from? That complex, if you will. There is no God complex without God. Let me say that to you again. There is no God complex without God. Without the creator, there is no complex like that. You can't, it doesn't exist. There is no creation, no implementation, no device that has ever been used, okay, that has not been conceived, brought forth, or put forth by the Most High God himself. Not one. I never heard of a boat in the Old Testament. I heard of an ark in the Old Testament. A boat is a watered down ark. A watered down ark. The ark is a yacht plus a submarine. Some player shit people can't even imagine. That's why I can't even go there with people, because it's like they don't even believe in the Most High God. They can't get to where I'm at because they don't believe what I believe. Okay? They can't. You'd have to believe that. You'd have to believe that there is one who is on high, who controls everything. You'd have to believe that and be totally, I'm sold to that. I'm sold to that. I'm more sold to that than any Super Bowl winning champion in the Patriot system. Can you dig it? I'm way more sold on my God than any one of those dudes. Believe me. Believe me. Ain't not one of those motherfuckers ever going to get arrested for the type of shit. Look, I'm not out here running around killing people that used to play football with me. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Trying to prove my gangster. Meat stands up for poop butt ass Africans who won't even stand up for themselves. Who won't even say, I found the wallet, I didn't steal it. Right. That's the type of shit I get in trouble for. We're not even the same people. We're not even the same people. These guys, once again, they make it a point to shave their heads and their faces. Make it a point to. It's their favorite thing to do. to do what the so-called dominant society has forced them to do because it makes it easier on them. Yet they claim that they haven't gave in or capitulated to the demands of dominant society. Hell, they'll claim if you grow your beard and your hair that you're either one, you're trying to be rugged or you're just into some kind of fashion statement. A beard grows, bitch, because it grows, bitch. What are you talking about? Not a fucking fashion statement, nigga. If I grow my fucking face, it's the dumbest shit I ever heard. It's the dumbest shit I ever fucking heard. What? What? It grows on my face, so now it's a fashion statement? These niggas act like you went and got it surgically implanted. This shit is crazy. Okay? It's ridiculous. It's childish. But booty faced, moist looking ass niggas are the types of dudes who push that charge. And they can be mad about it all they want. I'm telling the truth. I'm shaming the devil right now. And if you want to tear your clothes and pick up rocks, 115 North Yakima, Tacoma, Washington, apartment 507 is where you can find me. Trust me, I done laid my address out many a times. Okay? I done laid my address out many times. Anybody who want to come see your boy, you come see me 7 days of the week, 24/7. You can't just walk right in. You're going to have to buzz up. But just go ahead and buzz 507. I will gladly come down and meet you and address the situation. Don't worry, I ain't got no guns right now. So you just be getting your ass beat to nothing. Not tripping. Not tripping. And then we'll see what people are worth. See, that's the type of shit I'm on. Not tripping. Ever. 0%. They're not built like that. They'll never be built like that. Scary ass niggas. Women is what they are to me. Women. Women who I would never obviously deal with or even give the time and day to because drama is all they're concerned with. Women. Listen. I play patient for one reason. One reason only, because I want to see the end. That's it. I want to see that part that Enoch is talking about, where he's talking about how the sheep are all going to be marching with all the different beasts of the field, and then out of nowhere they're going to be given the sword, and then out of nowhere they're just going to start slaying all the beasts of the field. I can't wait. Because the Most High God is going to use the same sheep that he's going to burn up. Can you dig it? The same sheep he's going to throw into hell. He's going to let some of them bust heads too. And then he's going to send them right to hell. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, there ain't nothing like it. There is no thing like it. Oh, don't think that the righteous and elect won't be getting their piece on that. But the reason why he's going to do what he's doing is so that way, how are people going to know that they don't make it? Right. They're going to be thinking that there's no way I'm not making it. Shit, I just put it in on evildoers. I'm good to go. Knowing in their heart, they're evil. Right on? Okay? They have ulterior motives for why they do good. They're not good because they just genuinely want to be a good person. No. They're good with the mission. There's a mission behind my goodness. And they know it. And they know it. And because they use a two-faced, a double-hearted approach, a two-faced approach, there are always going to be those people who the Most High is like, you're out of here. Did the Most High God only get the righteous and elect out of Egypt, or did he take them all out of Egypt? Thank you very much. We know how that ended. But he also killed those who would not be circumcised. Said, bam, here you go. You're out of here. Then he also killed off all those who would not listen to him. Can you dig it? And then he cursed those that continued to err in the path of unrighteousness. So, if you think that your boy is tripping, guess again, because I'm not. I'm not tripping even 0% on this one. I've got this one pretty much locked in. I'm good to go. get ready to shut it down here in a moment. But before I do, I'm going to read this very next part of the last book there is in the entire book of Enoch. Can you guys believe? Can y'all believe you've been that patient with me? That we have gotten through a whopping 90 chapters of the book of Enoch? And this is chapter 91. And we're just going to read, and I'm just going to read it to you real quick. This very first verse and nothing else. And then I'm going to talk for a couple more moments and then salute time. Chapter 91. And now, my son Methuselah, call to me all thy brothers, and gather to me all the sons of thy mother. For the words call me, and the Spirit is poured out upon me, that I may show you everything that shall befall you forever. So just understand that going forward, we're going to be reading, hearing, listening to one Enoch who is going to tell his son Methuselah the exact way that things are going to look in the end. How it's going to be in the end. I imagine chapter 4 or book 4 not going the way that it went. This has gone very, when I say very smooth, very smooth. I do accredit the Most High just giving me a little bit of understanding. And outside of that, me taking the time, I read book 4 probably like 3 times. I don't even understand. I read this stuff and read it, and sometimes I just get so far from it. I'll be 2 weeks from the information or a week from the information, and it's always not as fresh. But we do an update tomorrow of the week. I'll let y'all know how D Treasy's doing. Tomorrow's update is gonna be top dog. I can't wait. Can't wait to do the top dog weekly update. It's only gonna be called top dog one time, but trust me, I think you guys are gonna like it. It'll be very informational. Very informational. Probably have about 5 or 6 different links, reading stuff from as late as mid last week, most of the things from this week. I know though none of us live in Virginia Beach. If y'all heard about what happened over there, man, pray for those people, man. That's always unfortunate when somebody loses their bearing and decides to take out their frustrations on other individuals as opposed to either solely harming themselves. And I would rather them not do that. I would rather them just, if there's any help they can get, if there's something to help them, I would rather them do that. But, yeah, sister, another shooting. And this happened probably about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago. It happened about 20 minutes before I started the stream. So probably about 2.5 hours ago, some news stations as late as 3, but yeah, it's always sad, because people don't really enjoy their lives, man. They don't live their lives enough. They don't do anything enough. And so because of that, there's always this feeling that to me they're just desperate, to me they're desperate. To me they're nothing more than a desperate individual, and that's always going to be upsetting. It always makes for a shitty situation. But let's end on this note. I'm gonna talk about Enoch real quick, and I just have to end on this note. I think this is a really positive note. There is hope, brothers and sisters. There's hope. There's so much hope. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope. Did you notice how in the end the sheep were marching against the ram? That was the sign of hope to the people, and that they sought to break his horn. Did you notice that? That it wasn't until the Most High God gave them the sword, right? Until they could pursue the other beasts of the field, who oppressed them, by the way, that they were able to do what they done. The Most High God is so wise and so so comely to everything that he does. Really is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing that he does. His kindness can't be expressed enough. His mercy, his grace, his long suffering, his patience, none of it can be expressed enough. I say this and then I end on this note. We are all subject to the power of the Most High God. There was not one person who was going to get out of this life alive. They're not going to make it. No one's going to make it out alive, as far as I'm concerned. The people of this generation can hope to, but they should hope that their children's children and their children's children's children have something to look forward to. Maybe they get made into the white bulls that we could never be. We don't have the constitution to be, but the Most High God didn't see fit to make us. Whichever way, it doesn't really matter. It's just one thing. It's just be thankful that you were here because you are here right now. There is no time like the present, and I wouldn't have traded it for any other time period. I always think I should have been born before. I was born too late. I would say that, but I wasn't. I was born at the right time. I was born when I was supposed to be born. With that, brothers and sisters, I salute you, as I salute you all the time. It is an honor. It is an honor to address you and speak to you. May tomorrow be better than today, and may this week be better than this last week. And may you continue to have a year that is fulfilling and productive. That's it. Good night.